Hey Renee.
Hi, Joshua.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, it's still me. I
I was
promise.
gonna say, sporting a new look.
Yeah, it was me under there the whole time.
Yeah, you were hiding.
Well, it was actually a Zoom filter. This is actually is what I've looked like this whole time, but I just had the beard filter on.
Well, I guess we have to change up our look,
Yeah.
something during this lockdown. So we had a really good class on Tuesday. I really enjoyed it. And I have to say I was getting still a little bit skeptical about this whole Kabbalah thing because that's why I was asking you like our last video, like what is the point? Why are we learning
Mhm.
this? But I feel like on Tuesday we really learned some like useful things, like the whole story about the donkey driver, and I don't know. I just thought it was a really good takeaway. That you never know where divine inspiration can come from, and you should keep your eyes open at all times.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the real implications of thinking about the divine, right, as something infinite, right, which then by necessity, in a sense, has to upend all these hierarchies and value systems and like, 'cause if God cannot be contained, if God cannot be assigned to these human values, then why is it that we see only the important human things as being the venues for the divine, or even let's say the important Jewish things, even, right? Does it actually change the way we relate to Judaism or change the way we relate to what it means to be a Jew?
Yeah. So you started off the class with a question
Mm-hmm.
that was, I forget your exact wording, but you asked us to give examples of when we feel closest to God.
Mm.
And so I'm going to flip the question back to you because I wanted to hear what your answers were. Because I had, okay, go ahead, answer your own question. If you don't,
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot of answers.
hmm,
I felt very close to Kadosh Baruch Hu while davening. I felt close to God while davening alone. I felt close to God while davening in community. I feel especially close when there's real sense of like davening happening between people, a real sense of like, yeah, that connection.
mhm.
I felt God walking around. Uh, you know, uh, uh, I have felt close to God while doing something kind. Um, I've felt close to God while dancing my heart out.
I Yeah,
Oh,
good
I
answer.
felt close to God while learning Torah. That's true,
Yes.
actually.
So I was surprised in the class, like when you asked that question, like immediately, like 10 different things came into my mind.
Mm.
And I was like, some of them are personal. And I was like, well, can I share that? Can I not share it? And then I would, that's why I kind of jumped in at the end. I thought of something that maybe everybody could relate to. It's like the listening
Mm-hmm.
to music sometimes
Mm.
you can feel God, but I was surprised by the answers.
Mm.
Um, because nobody mentioned davening, and nobody really mentioned uh things that when I feel Hashem, like for me, another example for me would have been, well, lighting Shabbat candles and also davening at shul, having a baby, standing under the chuppah. Like maybe these are experiences other people haven't had yet in their life, or can't relate to. So that's, I was trying to think of something that was generic that maybe everybody could relate to because maybe people haven't had those
Well,
experiences yet. But
the way I framed the question was also kind of pointing it towards more, let's say, like less. When I say conventional, I don't mean like common. I mean like there's a convention, right? Like shul and Torah. That's where like God happens, right? And I was kind of trying to like, where are some less common places, or where are some less conventional places that
yeah,
people can
yeah, but nobody really said shul. I guess maybe if you had directed it in a different way.
I think if I remember correctly, I think I did. But also on the other hand, interesting feedback. For
Um,
this quasi rabbi.
So I'm reading this
Hey, Pinchas. Very
tandem
nice.
to your class just because
Great.
I feel like if I learn it and then I read about it after, it's a little bit, it like
Mhm.
solidifies in my mind a little bit.
Good.
But the Kabbalah, a guide for the perplexed, I'll show so that everybody can see.
I can co-endorse this book. Pinchas Giller is a fantastic scholar. He's a
It's
really
really,
really great guy too.
it's a good book,
Hmm.
and like I would endorse
There
it
will be
also.
other reading suggestions by the end of the class. I have like a whole list we're curating, but I'm really glad that Renee is also showing some great books independently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he says, I'm quoting here, when I was a teacher in Jerusalem, my secular students would sometimes hunt down Kabbalists in the community. Oh, wait, no. Oh, here. People come to ask me sometimes, what can I do that is Kabbalistic? So good question. What can I do that's Kabbalistic? And his answer is that the most Kabbalistic acts are the basic rituals of religious Judaism. Wearing a prayer shawl and tefillin, reciting the Shema in the morning and the evening, preparing Shabbat table, participating in the synagogue, and keeping Shabbat and festivals, shunning forbidden foods, and sexual liaisons. So those are like his answers. And I was like, that's kind of like what your class was about at the very beginning on Tuesday,
Hmm.
which I thought was interesting, like this idea of the derech or the orach.
Hmm.
Basically, it's the same thing. What you were saying, is that correct?
Yeah, so I think people are like these people are coming to Pinchas, as far as I understand the passage, and they're saying, "What can I do that is particularly Kabbalistic?" And he's saying, "No, you don't understand. The Kabbalah isn't about a different religion. Kabbalah is about the way you relate yourself to Judaism. Right? Kabbalah is a stream or an approach within Judaism." And that's quite right, because a lot of, like one of the most popular Kabbalistic genres of literature is Sefer Mitzvos, right? It's books of commandments, of Jewish rituals to do, but it gives you a way to relate to them that's new. Some of them are very technical, right? Some of them are a little more accessible, right? But what Kabbalah is it's reinfusing Judaism with a new sense of meaning, with a new sense of vitality and energy, a new sense of what it is that you're doing or what it is you're relating to when you're doing these acts. Um, and that's the thing, like, like the derech and the orach, right? Derech is a path that's been opened already and it's open to all, and orach is a path that has been trammeled for the first time, or rather, it's been shown to you in a new way. It's as if it's completely renewed by the tzaddik. Um, and in that way, right, you've been putting on tefillin, you're putting on tefillin every day, putting on talis every day, davening from siddur every day, learning chumash every day. Like all these things that feel routinized, feel like retinue, right? Feel like things that are uh, just like a routine, right? And Kabbalah is trying to, I think, give us a charge, right? Give us like a reboot, to actually dislodge ourselves from being so familiar, from being so used to it all, and instead give us a way to relate to it as anew.
Hmm.
Um, to make the strange familiar and to make the familiar strange.
Yeah, I think that that is the answer I've kind of been seeking, like why we should study this. It's for that reason, what you just said right there. So that's
Yeah. You're saying, like you said earlier, like, you've been skeptical about Kabbalah. And I think one of the things in my approach to the materials, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm trying to present like extant historical materials, right, in context with tools to understand them, and also to give a lens of why these things were so, like, what their significance is. And then the next step is, okay, so like what significance can it have for me? Or can it
exactly.
show me a new way of thinking about how to relate to this material? I don't like, I'm not here trying to get people to believe in specific things or to believe in magic or something like that, or to believe in some kind of charismatic spiritual leader. It's just more like to give people access to a whole new body of Torah, like a whole new um, wealth of material that has immense insight, real potential for connection and new ways to, I think, new ways to understand.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I think it's good to learn because, like you said before, you're just putting tefillin on every day, or you're lighting Shabbat candles every week. Like you really have to. There really is a spiritual element to these actions that we perform all the time, and we have to stay conscious to that. So yeah. Um, there there was one more thing I wanted to talk about, and it's escaped my mind for the moment. That's why I should write these things down. But was there anything from the class that you wanted to say that we didn't really get, that we didn't get to, or that we should think about for next class?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I just want to make sure people realize, and I mean, try to make sure I put the little ellipsis at the end, is that the story of the Taya, of the donkey driver, is one example of the Zohar um, emplacing revelation in an unlikely source. I mentioned in the class there's also a text called the Yanuka, the kiddo text, right? In which a child, right, is like bespeaking Torah. There's also Saba de Mishpatim, the text of the grandpa of the Parsha Mishpatim, which is one of the trippiest revelations in all of Zohar. This like crazy mushal about a snake flying around in multiple pieces. It's really wild. So some of the stuff I actually haven't gotten into the content. We're actually gonna save it for the last 2 weeks of like actually getting deep into the actual material.
Mhm.
I've been really focusing more on the framing elements, on what kind of constructs the main body of the Zohar, which is called the Gufa Zohar, which literally means the body of the Zohar. And what we're going to look at actually at the beginning of Tuesday's class is kind of giving us good introductory tools just to make sure we understand what it is that the Zohar is comprised of. But a lot of these texts are long and they are complicated and complex, and they are long running exegetical marathons in a lot of ways. It's really associative, freewheeling, trippy interpretations of Torah, which are amazing, but I think do require a lot of support and a lot of exposure to what it is that they are drawing on. Right, so one of the ways I've kind of presented what the Zohar especially is, not just Kabbalah, I say especially the Zohar in the way that it's written, its literary style, is that it's the kind of the next stage of Midrash. Midrash is an attempt to try to use gaps and problems in the source text to as to gin up creative interpretation, and Zohar takes the Midrash and then cranks it up a whole nother level, bringing in symbolism to a level that, like the original Midrash, is maybe dealing with maybe some rudimentary symbolism, but Zohar brings in a complex symbolic system, which we talked about in the first volume of this class. The most obvious, most primary example being the Sfirot, which the Zohar only refers to, right? It only gestures to them. It's not an explicit text in that regard. But again, it keeps things esoteric. It keeps things secret.
Right.
It keeps you engaged to keep on trying to decode and interpret and understand, and in that way, place yourself within the text.
Okay. So on that note, I have a Parsha question.
Oh yeah, great.
Maybe can be explained Kabbalistically, because you were just saying that Kabbalah sometimes can fill in the gaps, um, by cranking it up, anyway. So my question, I've had this question forever. One of the mitzvot is not to uh, combine wool and linen in our clothing. A person cannot combine wool and linen in their clothing. But the last week's parsha, Tetzaveh, right? That's all it is about the priest's clothing, and all it is like woven wool and linen together.
Yeah.
This is my question. Like every year I have this question, like, why is the high priest's clothing and much of the Mishkan, also all the curtains and everything, are all wool and linen? Like, why
Great question.
why is that allowed, but we are not allowed to wear those?
Well, one exception um, is tzitzis, is that you're always allowed to have wool tzitzis, even if you have a linen garment, but it's discouraged. So that's one possibility of it being democratized. But
Right.
I think what you're noting is something. I think maybe instead of getting like technically Kabbalistic or something, I just want to turn to anthropology, and talk about the notion of taboo. Right, taboo is usually something we think of like, oh, something's taboo, right? Something is, well, it's a word that you buzz in the game,
Yeah.
but that taboo is something that's like bad, something you stay away from. But the anthropological notion of taboo is that it is both something that has a force that's repelling, right? It keeps you away from it, but on the other hand, it's because it's actually a site of great power. So a good example to think of in that regard are things like that is a really helpful um, conjoining of opposites when it comes to a lot of things having to do with the mikdash. Right, a lot of things, for instance, being tame, right, being impure,
Right.
is not a sin. It's very clear in the Torah. It is not something that's bad, but it's something that cannot be accepted within the mikdash. There's some kind of, it seems like, competing spiritual forces that are pushing them away, kind of like the poles from a magnet.
Mhm. So
Uh,
this is kind of where a Kabbalistic interpretation is
well,
good.
but yeah, I think
Usually
the thing is
there's no
where.
answer. There's no answer. We don't know why this
Well,
is like.
I don't want to say. I mean, there are plenty of answers. Actually, this is a site of great exegetical ferment in
Mhm.
Kabbalah. There are plenty of answers that are given. I don't know if they explain it away per se, but yeah, I think it's not an accidental thing that this thing that is seen as being usser, right? Thing that is seen as being forbidden, is not something that's bad, but is actually related to as a source of a site of great power, which only the Kohen Gadol is able to relate to safely. So maybe this is a good parallel to what we've talked about before about Rabbi Akiva and going to Pardes, and like we talked about last week in the video about like, oh, the danger of Kabbalah, right? It's not because Kabbalah is bad, it's because it's a site of great power, of that intimacy and direct connection with God. And you need to be able to relate to it safely, and you have to have the tools to receive it. Now, it's interesting that Shatnez is the combination of animal matter and plant matter, right?
Yes.
Wool from a sheep and linen from flax. Um, and that those two things, it seems, actually shouldn't be mixed, which is curious. It's also part of a larger regulation around what's called kilayim, which is about not mixing different species together, and that can even be like different seeds and things like that, like keeping your orchards and your gardens right separate. But there's something very curious about Shatnez because kilayim isn't allowed. I mean, agricultural kilayim not allowed. But again, what's interesting though is that when those things happen, those things are called like those things are called like it's usher or kadosh, right? It's actually something that's seen as being only something that is dedicated to the temple, right? When you are able to when you kind of cross those boundaries. So there's there's a lot of there is a lot of Kabbalistic writing about it. I don't want to just like kind of dash off an answer or something like that, but I mean to think about what it means to draw on different aspects of existence, to draw on different energies, right? The plant and the animal energy, think of like Chesed and Gevura mixing and things like that. Um, and that's something actually that only a religious functionary like the Kohen Gadol is able to synthesize in that kind of way.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, no, I think you noticed something quite interesting and definitely not something to ignore.
Yeah, I think that maybe y- I feel like it's probably a very deep answer and that maybe not everybody can handle it. And so that's why the rabbis just kind of say, like, I've asked this question before. It's just like, we don't, and like, my answer was always, oh, we don't know. It's just one of those things like keeping kosher. We don't know. But I'm like, there's an answer to everything. The rabbis are,
Yeah, I don't I think that's productively using agnosticism, right? It's like, oh wow, we don't know. There's plenty of people who write about it though. You like again, it's not about solving the problem or explaining it away, but it's about seeing it as an opportunity to bring meaning to it, right? To understand, to draw meaning from it.
yeah.
Um, plenty of people write about why we keep kosher. There's tons of material about why we keep kosher. Um, but again, I think the thing about finding what's called, so this is a genre that I gestured at before called Ta'amei Mitzvot. It's called the reasons for the commandments. And it's a hugely popular and common Kabbalistic genre, especially, is to try to figure out why it is we do the mitzvahs. Now, a lot of that isn't about finding genealogies for them, right? Like etiologies, like explanations of their origins, but rather kind of what Aristotle would call a final cause, right? When we do a mitzvah, what does it do? Right? In
Yeah.
other, like, it's like, why do we give charity, right? Because of what it does. Now, we're not trying to explain like who's the first person who gave charity, right? We're trying to explain like why do you give charity? Like, what's the value in doing it? What's the function? What's the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
So similarly, the Kabbalistic genre of Ta'amei Mitzvot, not just done by Kabbalists, Rambam, Guide to Perplex is a big text of Kabbalah of Ta'amei Mitzvot. But to try to figure out like why, to bring reason, right, to bring understanding to the mitzvahs, and there's lots to be said about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I have formulated my own answer to this question, and similar to what you
Give it
just said.
over.
I don't think I will.
Now who's being secret? Now who's the mystic?
If anybody really wants to know, they can email me my opinion about what.
All right. Well, more than enough reason to tune in.
Okay, so I'll see you in class on Tuesday night.
Yeah, Tuesday, 7:30. Be there, be square.
Okay.
Yeah. Oops.
Are you still there?